All right, we are live on YouTube. And welcome everybody who's listening. For some strange reason, our practice session mechanism was not working. So you've seen all the puppet strings behind the stage. And you know what we do when we're getting ready, which isn't much at all, really. Fortunately, we didn't say anything inappropriate. Not that we ever would, of course. We'll get started in just a couple of minutes, let people have a chance to sign on. But those of you who are just with us, hang on for a couple of minutes and welcome. We usually give it 2 or 3 minutes. So those of you who are just signing on, this is the Montgomery County Renters Alliance Renter Town Hall. We hold these Renter Town Halls every 2 weeks or so. We are live on YouTube. It is being recorded. So if you miss any of our incredibly important words, you can hear them again on YouTube. Few more seconds and we'll get going. And there's my magic number. Okay. Good evening, everyone. My name is Matt Losack. I'm the co-founder and executive director of the Montgomery County Renters Alliance. For many of you who don't know us, we are the first and only regional nonprofit dedicated exclusively to renter outreach, education, organizing, and advocacy. We were started back in 2010, and we work with the county and with our partners and allies to advance renters' rights and work with you on individual issues and improve policy and legislation. A couple housekeeping things. If you have questions or concerns, please put them in the chat. Our staff and I will get to them as we go through our program this evening, but please put them in the chat. You can do the raised hand thing and all that, but that's not what we're looking for. We're looking for any comments or questions you have in the chat, and we will get to them. Tonight, we have a focus on 2 particular areas of importance to renters. First and foremost, on voting and voter registration. And we have with us Dr. Gilberto Zelaya from the Montgomery County Board of Elections. And then later on, we have Allison Kelly with the District Court Help Services, if I've got that right, but doing good at the court, who is also with us, and she's a supervising attorney. We also have our staff. We have Malek Demir, and we have Pat Beckham and David Mullins, who provide outreach for us across Montgomery County. And this evening also, I'm pleased to have with us the chair of the board of directors for the Montgomery County Renters Alliance to give us some opening remarks, William Roberts. Will, take it over.
Well, good evening, Matt, and good evening, everyone. Good to be with you for another virtual town hall. Hope everyone is doing well and enjoying the beginning of your fall. As Matt said, I'm Will Roberts. I have the pleasure to be the chair of our board of directors and really excited about the conversation we're going to have tonight. See my buddy, Dr. Z, as he is affectionately known around the county, also my Clarksburg neighbor, here to give us some really important information. And I think it's really critical as we're and important as we're approaching the general election to have a conversation both about sort of the core conversation that we have here, right, about that work of the Renters Alliance, so renters' rights, education, advocacy work, and the important stuff that's going to go on there, but also to take some time out, as we always do, for folks who know the Renters Alliance. One of the core parts of our mission is civic engagement of our renter community. And Matt has, I don't know if you can see it right there on his shoulder there, or on his chest there, but it's a button that we and some of our volunteers have that says, "I'm a renter and I vote." And that is both a message as we're advocating to our public officials to let folks know that renters count. That we've updated it for a different coalition. Yeah. But that's a message both to let folks in the civic space know that, we as tenants and renter advocates have something to say about the goings on of our civic discourse, not just around housing, but period, right? Or an important part of the fabric of this community. And of course, the all important tie to that civic engagement is voting. That's the ultimate way to make your voice heard and to participate. And so Dr. Z is going to tell you about all the fantastic work that he does, he and his team do round the clock to make sure that our voices can be heard. And I'm excited about that. So thanks for being with us, Dr. Z. Just wanted to say a note of a couple of things that have happened recently that are really critical. Of course, you'll hear in the conversation tonight, but Renters Alliance is, of course, continued to be on the front lines with our partners and working with renters around the county who need our assistance. We are very cognizant of what's going on, in the news with rent increases happening and in the community, and have been in the news talking about what's going on, but continue to be advocates at the county level and indeed at the state level as we see opportunities for policy changes and interventions to benefit renters in our community. And so you'll hear more about that. Matt and some of our board members and volunteers had the chance to take part in an important conversation yesterday evening, which Matt, I'm sure we'll talk about on NPR on the Kojo Namdi show, Kojo in Your Community. There was a conversation in downtown Silver Spring about affordable housing in Montgomery County and what it meant. And we were pleased to be a part of that conversation to talk about what that means for renters. And so we are, just continuing to move the ball forward on our issues and advocate for renters in this space. And so happy to see folks here, and for folks that that might need assistance or information, make sure you're passing some assistance and information back, both about how you can plug into rental assistance or renters rights and education, but also how you can plug into some of this voter education information that you're getting here tonight. So it's really happy to have folks here and to continue our part in the civic discourse on behalf of renters. So with that, Matt, I'll kick it back over to you.
Thank you, Will. Will Roberts, again, our chair of the board of directors, who's also been civically engaged in so many other areas. Not only was he in the Commission of Landlord and Tenant Affairs, you were chair of the Upcounty Citizens Advisory Board. He was Jamie Raskin's legislative director and general counsel, I believe, and is now a senior policy person at the Center for American Progress. So staying engaged, there's our model right there. If you're not out of breath already, that's the kind of example that many engaged renters set, and Will does that.
That's why I travel with you, Matt.
Add, sorry, Will.
I said that's why I travel with you, Matt. You
right.
tell my story better.
That's why my beard turned white, right? And yours is to follow shortly, I promise you. I want to say just something else about last night, since Will Roberts brought it up. It was not only about affordable housing, it was also about the Thrive 2050 report, which has been somewhat controversial in Montgomery County. Some people are for it, some people are against it. The Renters Alliance doesn't really have a particular position one way or the other. There are some elements in the Thrive report that we like, some things that we don't like, but we do have one thing that was of serious concern to us, and that was the importance of civic engagement in the process. Frankly, we were excluded from that process. We were never asked to participate in it, and we didn't have any say. And if anybody's paying any attention at all to what's going on in the news these days, there are some major changes in the entire planning board have been asked to resign, and they have done so. And there are going to be some major changes over there. And we see this as an important opportunity to rethink civic engagement, our voices, organized voices for renters in a planning process around housing that's going to matter to all of our constituency, which is nearly 400,000 residents of Montgomery County. So, let's just keep that in mind and pay attention to what's happening, but it's going to be extremely important. Okay, so with that, let me turn to our first guest, special guest, Dr. Gilberto Zelaya from the Montgomery County Board of Elections, to give us the information on how we can get engaged in voting in the November 8th coming election.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for affording me the opportunity to engage you all. You guys are part of our voting foundation. Montgomery County has about 675,000 registered voters. I'm going to initiate the share screen. Okay. Can everyone see the PowerPoint?
We see a blue screen, but no PowerPoint yet.
Okay, let me go back and pick the correct one. How about
Good color.
how about now?
There we go.
Perfect. So as Dr. Martin Luther King noted, voting is a foundation stone for political action. And at the end of the day, all roads lead back to the Board of Elections, and it's our duty and responsibility to ensure a transparent, accessible franchise. Let me click here, and obviously I am, okay. So now my screen doesn't want to play nice. Okay, why isn't this working? I apologize. Now it's not working, hold on. It was working when we did the, oh wow.
Zoom glitches are part of our lives these days.
So yeah, now something's happening. I have this sophisticated 3-monitor setup, and now, of course, today it doesn't want to play nice. So, you know what? I have a big mouth and I have all these slides memorized, and I know that everyone has a busy evening, so let me continue without the slides, but I'll still share them with you and I'll send them to you, Matt.
Okay.
Perfect. So as Dr. Martin Luther King noted, political action really starts with your voice, and that's the cornerstone. Obviously, remember I call it the eternal primaries. One of the things that was interesting was we had about 75,000 mail-in ballots returned to the Board of Elections. And by law, we are charged to initiate the canvass of said mail-in ballots to the Thursday after Election Day, which was Thursday, July 21st. Having said that, it took us about 3 weeks to canvass and tabulate those mail-in ballots, and we had about 7,500 provisional ballots that we needed to research to why a voter submitted said provisional ballots either at the early voting location or Election Day polling place. Then after we certified the elections, we needed to conduct the recount of the Democratic nominee for county executive. It took about a week to set that up, but it took us about 3 days to count, hence the delay and canvassing and then recertifying the election after the recount. Now, full disclosure, just like Monopoly, we don't make the rules, they exist for us to follow. And so there was a challenge for individuals waiting for those results. Kind of difficult for us to apologize for that. It was the part of the mechanism. And also we had, like I said, over 75,000 mail-in ballots. Now, moving forward to the current election. The first important date to initiate any type of interaction with the Board of Elections and your constitutional right to a secret vote is being registered to vote. And that deadline is coming up, which is this coming Tuesday, October 18th. So one thing we created, which will facilitate access to the franchise and information, is grab your trusty cell phone and text the word vote to 77788, vote to 77788. And it's an easy prompt. You could register to vote, just follow the information. It takes you, the system will send you the Maryland State Board of Elections online voter registration link. Now, if there's been any life changes between the primary or maybe the 2020 presidential elections, you need to update your voter registration. Now, since we're with I'm here talking on behalf with the Renters Alliance, even if you are in the same apartment complex, and let's say in 2020 or in the primaries, you were renting a 1-bedroom apartment, and between the primary and today, you got married, and now you have an expecting child, so you have to move to a 2-bedroom apartment within the same apartment complex. For us, the Montgomery County Board of Elections, that is the new address. Even though the physical building, let's say it's 101 Main Street, but from apartment 101 to 304, you need to inform us of that change, because sample ballot, any type of correspondence, and if you requested a mail-in ballot, especially if you want to be placed on a permanent list, but when you requested to be on a permanent list in the primaries, you lived in apartment 101, but now you were in apartment 305, the postmaster will not forward that mail-in ballot, that sample ballot, or any correspondence from our office. So make sure your voter registration is current and up to date. You could do that, once again, grab your trusty cell phone and text the word check to 77788. And in case we have any of our Spanish-speaking electorate, la palabra es revise al 77788, y para inscribirse para votar es la palabra vota al 77788. So now, once you're registered to vote and everything is current, then you have 3 options to vote. Number 1 is by mail. Right now, we have about 122,000 mail-in ballot requests. If you've been living under a rock, and if you didn't hear about the circuit court allowing the local boards of elections permission to initiate pre-election canvassing. This coming Saturday, 9 a.m. at the Montgomery County Board of Elections, we will initiate the pre-election canvass of return mail-in ballots. Mail-in ballots were mailed to Montgomery County domestic residents last Saturday, and 2 Saturdays ago, the overseas international mail-in ballots were sent. So about a week and a half ago, we have installed 55 ballot drop boxes across Montgomery County. And once again, to identify the closest ballot drop box near your neighborhood, grab your trusty cell phone and text the word box and your zip code, but make sure there's a space between the X and the first digit of the postal number, box and your zip code, to 77788. Y si usted está buscando el buzón de entrega de papeletas más cercano, envía un mensaje de texto con la palabra buzón sin el tilde, buzón y su código postal al 77788. And so the system will kick back the closest ballot drop box and even the post office locator if the post office is closer than your ballot drop box. Us, the Montgomery County Board of Elections, have bipartisan teams going out every morning to every single box in Montgomery County. So if you deposit your box this evening at 8 p.m., we guaranteed less than 24-hour pickup tomorrow morning by 10 a.m. As we near early voting and election day, we will do 2 pickups, one in the morning and one in the evening. But by all means, for us to maximize the opportunity to initiate the pre-election day canvass, don't hold on to that mail-in ballot. Make your selections, send it back, but make sure you sign the voter oath on the return envelope. And if you are one of the 18,000 voters that requested a web delivery ballot, make sure you print the voter oath and you mail that along with your 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper ballot that you print at home or at your office. Note that the web delivery ballot is one of the reasons there was a delay in processing or canvassing those ballots, because our bipartisan teams must duplicate your 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper via web delivery to duplicate it on the official cardstock, which is the standard 8.5 by 17 cardstock ballot. That also was kind of an Achilles heel to to canvas. So in the future, if you can, I understand the web delivery is great for our military overseas. I have a relative who's doing research on Mount Kilimanjaro in Africa. That's the reason web delivery was created. But if you're in Kensington, Gaithersburg, within Montgomery County or the domestic United States, we would like for you to use the traditional cardstock moving forward. But nonetheless, you ultimately will make the decision which format you will use if you select mail-in ballots. If you still have a desire to vote by mail, once again, grab your phone and you could text the letters VBM to 77788, VBM to 77788. Y si usted quiere votar por correo, usted envía las letras VPC al 77788. Now, for those individuals who desire to vote in person, you have two options. Early voting. Early voting will start from Thursday, October 27th through Thursday, November 3rd, from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. Montgomery County has 14 approved early voting centers. Once early voting initiates on the 27th of October, grab your cell phone and text the letters EV and your zip code, EV and your zip code, and the system will kick back the 4 nearest early voting centers, drive-in directions, and more importantly, the wait times. So if you're in downtown Silver Spring and you get the White Oak Community Center, the Praisner Community Center, or downtown the Silver Spring Civic Building, and the Civic Building has a 20-minute wait, Praisner has a 15-minute wait, and White Oak has a 5-minute wait, well, then Mathematic will dictate for you to go to White Oak, depending on your driving distance, because there's only a 5-minute wait at the White Oak Community Center. But nonetheless,
Dr. Z, a quick question on that.
Yeah.
I noticed in the last round of early voting versus the election day, are there different centers for early voting versus official centers on election day?
yes. So there are some early voting centers that also are used as an election day center. And remember in 2018, there was an issue about lines, right? And what happened at White Oak specifically, voters that were leveraging the Praisner Community Center during early voting, then all of a sudden on election day, remember that in 2016, 2014, they voted at Praisner, but for whatever reason, they didn't recall that it was during early voting, and then they showed up to vote there on election day. Now, the difference between early voting and election day is early voting, you are not tied to the nearest early voting center. I live in Clarksburg, and if I'm having dinner in downtown Silver Spring and I see that the Silver Spring Civic Building is available, I could vote there. And every single early voting centers will have the 255 different unique ballot styles available. However, on election day, you are technically tied to your corresponding election day polling place. And you could identify that location on the back cover of your sample ballot, which will be sent out this week, or you could text the word check to 77788 to identify the appropriate election day polling place.
So basically, early voting, you can vote anywhere where there's a voting center, but on election day, you've got to go to your assigned voting center.
You should go to your assigned voting center, because if for whatever reason, and you know how dismal traffic is in the DMV, if for whatever reason you are coming back from work from the district and you live in Germantown and you're stuck in traffic, obviously, if it's 7:15, you may not make it in time. So you could go to the nearest polling place on election day. You will need to vote a provisional ballot, but at no time is a poll worker allowed to turn you away. And then we will do our due diligence to identify and research why was this voter who lives in Germantown voting in Silver Spring. But of course, there's an application that you will need to fill out and make sure you sign that application. So that ensures that once we research that we will count or make the recommendations to our board of candidates to accept that provisional ballot. Now, with the 14 early voting locations, you have 8 consecutive days from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. If for whatever reason you're living under a rock and you just didn't register to vote, you can leverage something called same-day voter registration during early voting and on election day. What you need to bring is a Maryland driver's license, permit, or ID that's current. And if you don't have that, a governmental document, utility bill, or a bank statement that has your name and your current Montgomery County address. Then the check-in judge will then escort you to the same-day registration table. You'll fill out some paperwork, and they will do their due diligence to register you and then provide you the appropriate ballot style. If you are doing the same on election day, which is Tuesday, November 8th, you will follow the same process, take the appropriate documentation, register to vote, and then you could flex your voting privilege by voting. And those 14 early voting locations, one thing I want you guys to understand that after the 2022 gubernatorial election, leading to the presidential elections, these early voting centers are not set in stone. Our board of directors at the Board of Elections will have a public hearing. We will have our voters and citizens and residents of Montgomery County make recommendations on early voting center selection for the 2024 presidential. So they're not in stone historically. They tend to stay at the same locations, but I just want to let you guys know that there's going to be an opportunity for the community to provide input on the early voting centers for the presidential elections. But for the current general elections, they're the same locations as in the primary that we had in July. Now, after early voting, let's say you're just extremely busy, you're not voting by mail, you want to vote in person, then the last opportunity will be on election day on Tuesday, November 8th. Once again, to identify the appropriate election day polling place, text the word check to 77788. Review your sample ballots. Make sure when you get your sample ballot, if you're voting in person, you make all of your selections. There's a couple of ballot questions and there's some ballot summary. A good resource for information, you could look at the League of Women Voters Voters Guide for information on candidates. But take that sample ballot with you if you're voting in person, because one thing you cannot do is make notes on your cell phone and then go to the polling booth to vote. And what's happening, I've seen people where they will go, they check in and they're looking at their notes, and then the poll worker will request them to get a sample ballot or to get a piece of paper and to jot down their selection. So it's easier if you use your sample ballot as a guide. So when you do check in, it will expedite your experience during early voting or on election day. Now, if you select to vote by mail, and for whatever reason you change and you say, you know what, I really want to vote in person, you could do so, but you will need to vote a provisional ballot. Okay, even if you bring a mail-in ballot and you shred it in front of the poll worker, they're still going to present you a provisional ballot. And then we need to do our research and we need to ensure that you did not submit a provisional ballot, that you did not return a provisional ballot, because technically you're allowed to vote.
So Dr. Z, we got the last Tuesday, the October 8th is the deadline to register. What is there a deadline or what does one do about going about getting a mail-in ballot?
So the deadline to request the traditional mail-in ballot is November 1st, that packet. You could also come here to the Montgomery County Board of Elections in person to get, you could submit an application, give the staff 5 to 10 minutes. We will create a packet for you and you can actually vote it here at the Board of Elections and you're done and you could go on your merry way. Or you can request the ballot and then we will mail it to you. Do not wait until the last minute, and this is the reason. We have seen voters who procrastinate, and then in the rush to return that ballot that they requested on the last day, they vote the ballot and they put it in a drop box. Then we pick it up, and then they forgot to sign the voter oath. Now we have to cure this. And so we contact the voter by phone, by email, we send a letter, and if you're so close, while we're canvassing, we want to make sure that your ballot gets counted. So please, if you're requesting a mail-in ballot, print the voter oath, sign it, and return that with your web delivery ballot. Or if you're voting the traditional cardstock 8.5 by 17 formatted ballot, make sure you sign the return envelope. Do not sign the ballot, because if you sign the ballot, it's going to be rejected automatically because it's a secret ballot.
So can a renter or voter request a mail-in ballot on the website?
Yes, you could also go on our website at 777vote.org. All the information is there. Or you could grab your trustee's cell phone and text the letters VBM to the same number, 77788. Or you could contact the Board of Elections at 240-777-8500 for more assistance. And then lastly, we are looking for a Future Vote. We have a Future Vote program where we incorporate about 1,000 students grades 6 to 12 as election day aides. We're not going to push the narrative for poll workers because we have one more week of training, which ends on the 22nd. But if there's a poll worker now listening, we have about 39 participants. And if you've taken your quiz and you're waiting to schedule your hands-on training, don't procrastinate. Call your recruiter, establish a date and time to receive your in-person training. Because a lot of times individuals will wait until the last minute because it's fresher in your mind. But then what's going to happen is you're going to bottleneck our training opportunity for other individuals in the pipeline. So if you happen to be one of our poll workers that applied, we've confirmed your registration, you've done the online quiz, and you're just waiting to schedule your hands-on training, do it as soon as possible. We have training sessions Monday through Sunday, morning, afternoon, and evening. So whatever works for you, works for us. But for the Future Vote students, all that information on how to incorporate your children, your nephews, your neighbors, your grandkids into the process. We are the only county in America and internationally that bring in students as young as 6th grade to serve as election day aides. And what they do is they hand out that voter sticker, they serve as greeters, they ensure that there's no partisan literature left in the voting booth. And if needed, they will provide assistance where needed. They work a 3-hour shift. There's a mandatory 1-hour orientation that I will start conducting next week. All the information is on our website, and we're looking for about another 250 students, especially in Down County, to participate in the program. And the goal of the program is, as these students age through the program, once they're 16 years of age and they meet the state requirements to become a poll worker and/or a registered voter, we will register them to vote and then to participate as poll workers. And the average age of the national average of poll workers is about 65 years of age. Montgomery County, for the last 6 years, 3 elections, the average age of our poll workers is actually 48, because we incorporate heavily a lot of our younger cohorts, high school students. And for example, my precinct of Hallie Wells, we had about 12 poll workers, and 7 of them were high school students 17 years and younger. So we're starting to incorporate our youth into the process as young as 6th grade. And hopefully what we've seen over the years, which was kind of interesting, which I really didn't foresee when I started the program way back in 2004, we have a lot of young adults in their mid to early 20s returning back into the area. And they actually stepped up and helped us out during the primary when we were lacking poll workers because of the change from the 28th of June to the 19th of July. So if you have loved ones, relatives, nephews that could participate in Future Vote, by all means, apply as soon as possible because training starts next week. Other than that, we touched about mail-in voting. We touched about the texting prompts. We touched about the ballot drop boxes. We have 55 of them. We talked about the early canvass, which begins this Saturday. If you go to our website, 777vote.org, you'll see a live stream. You're more than welcome to come to the Board of Elections and observe in person. We are all about transparency, but also we'll have a live stream. And also we're gonna place a calendar and we will update that calendar every so often because we want to canvass as many mail-in ballots as possible before Election Day. So that way we could turn over the results as soon as possible. And any pre-Election Day canvass mail-in ballots, those results will be released after all polls have closed on election night. So we will release the early voting numbers and then the vote by mail numbers canvass up to that date. And then we'll start releasing Election Day polling place as they are driven back to the Board of Elections by bipartisan poll workers. Other than that,
you guys sure are doing a terrific job, Dr.
oh,
Z.
thank you.
And creative too. I'm so proud to hear that we're engaging students. You can't start early enough getting people civically engaged. President Biden talks about restoring the soul of America. I think we have to start talking about what it means to be an American. And that means being civically engaged, especially for all you renters out there who are thinking about voting. Let's get you registered. A question did come in from our good friend Felicia Eberling. Is it about where the trainings takes place? Do we have
Yeah.
diverse places, or where are they?
Yeah, we've always done that since I've been here. We rotate around the county. We're having them at downtown Silver Spring Civic Building, at the White Oak Rec Center. We're at the EMOC Fleet, where in Rockville off of Kraz Branch. And then also we've gone to I'm off the top of my head, but it's at the Nancy Dasik North Potomac Community Center. But obviously we're close towards the end. If you happen to be one of our poll workers that need to be trained, please schedule that training as soon as possible.
Terrific. Malek, David, Pat, do we see any other questions or concerns for Dr. Z?
So do you need a parent's permission for people or children under the age of 18?
Yes, of course. For students who serve as poll workers, there's a permission slip that they need to fill out. And for the future vote ambassadors, there's a voter oath that the guardian and the student will sign as well. For the future vote cohort, the younger students, the guardian and student must attend mandatory training. It's a 1-hour orientation.
Okay.
And what's interesting is we invite the entire family. So the premise of Future Vote is we teach half of the trainings for the guardians. We talk what we just touched about right now, voting by mail, the A to Z, nuts to bolts of the voting franchise in Maryland. We talk about that. And then we talk about what the students can and cannot do. And the premise of the program is to inform and to educate the current electorate, but at the same time to provide information to our future electorate. And we've seen a decline of calls to our office because once these students come of age, they're extremely versed in the whole process. And what's interesting, we get all of these faxes. I have a fax machine still, but emails from students submitting like questions or their mail-in ballot applications from across the globe. So a well-informed electorate allows us to become better servant of the electorate.
So again, the go-to site is 777vote.org.
Yes, 777vote.org. And then you will click Future Vote, and then you will click Sign Up. And what I'll do is I will email Matt kind of instructions on both about the Future Vote program, step-by-step how to apply, and with screenshots and everything. And then that way, anyone who's interested, by all means, please register your child as soon as possible. And then they become part of the Future Vote family with the goal of poll worker service before they leave for college.
That's terrific. Do you know, Dr. Z, if participation in that counts towards service hours in the high schools?
Yes. I am known as the SSL pimp in Montgomery County because we give out so many SSL hours. And it's a great opportunity for the students to participate. So for every hour that the student gives in the program, they get 1 SSL hour. And because training is required, the school system, we're one of the few programs that allows us to give them the 1 SSL for training. Students, depending on how many shifts they serve, they could get anywhere between 4 to 10 SSL hours. And so at the end of the day, the goal is for them to learn about the process. They help us recruit other Future Vote ambassadors. And also once they're in high school, they could earn either the SSL hours or they could earn the stipend. And depending how many days an individual serves, they could earn anything from $1,830 to $650. My son in particular, he served as a poll worker for multiple days, and he was, he saw it as a summer job, and he got a stipend, and he learned a lot about the voting experience.
Well, that's the first time I've heard community service and pimp in the same sentence. A question in the chat: do you have to be a citizen?
So to be a poll worker, yes. To be a Future Vote ambassador, no. However, the student must read, write, and speak English because they need to receive instructions from the chief judge. So that's the only requirement. So they must live in Montgomery County, be within 6th to 12th grade. And what I've noticed is we've worked with over 50,000 students since the onset of the program and 30,000 families, and 10,000 poll workers have been promoted from Future Vote ambassadors to poll worker. And so what happens is we see about 80% of our ambassadors are middle school students. And then we see a drop right before, like around 10th, 9th grade, because then the students have a lot of SSL credits, and then they come back to us to serve as poll workers. And so about 2/3, 3/4 of our future vote ambassadors are middle school. And then you have those high school students who maybe do not meet the requirements to be a registered voter, which is citizenship and live in Maryland. And so they will serve as a future vote ambassador. So a small percentage of our older future vote ambassadors are non-citizens, but because they're not voting, they're not touching the equipment, they don't go near the ballots, they're just helping with kind of the auxiliary services tasks, they are afforded the opportunity to volunteer.
So it's an important civic engagement, whether you're a United States citizen, whether you're going to be a United States citizen, or whether you're going to take your civic engagement to get SSL credits, service credits in your high school, or just have the experience for your life wherever your home is when you return. So
exactly.
A terrific program.
Yeah, and one of the interesting things quickly was over the years, I've probably been invited to about 2-3 dozen naturalization ceremonies, because the student starts like poking on the parent, like, you should be a citizen. Why aren't you a citizen? And then the parent's like, you know what? We'll try it. We'll do it. And then they become naturalized citizens. And I've gone many of times, either around the area, Montgomery County, or in Baltimore, just to attend, because it's kind of, it really brings it home when you see a student in 6th grade, they're like no more than 70 pounds, 5'2", and then they become poll workers. Like my son now, he's 6'2", 250 pounds, and his good friend parents actually became naturalized citizen after interacting in the program. So there's some auxiliary benefits, not only to the county, but also to the country, that's not necessarily tied to election day service for those 3 hours as a greeter at the particular polling place.
Well, terrific program. Anything else, David, Mullins, Malek, Pat, on our staff? Do we see anything from our attendees?
Just quickly, one of the panel renters wanted to know, do the volunteers get paid?
Yes. So for the poll worker service, you do get a stipend depending on how many days and depending on the position. For the high school students serving as a poll worker, they can select either a stipend or the SSL credits. For the younger cohorts, the students that work as aides, there's no monetary compensation, but they get student service learning credits.
Understood. Good stuff. Anything else?
No, just
and with that, Dr. Z, Dr. Gilberto Zelaya, who's a senior staffer at the Montgomery County Board of Elections, and has put together some terrific programs for us.
Yeah.
And obviously is helping our county have one of the most efficient and effective election programs, hopefully in the country. So we're very grateful to have you here. We're grateful for your information. All the links to Dr. Z's Board of Elections and the information that he's just provided have been put in the chat. This has been recorded, so you can hear it again if you want to go on YouTube, and we will also include it in our upcoming newsletters. Dr. Z is going to send me links to the important information that he just gave us an overview on now, and we'll put that in our newsletter and keep it out there for people to see right up through the November 8th election. Again, I'm a renter and I vote. Pat Beckham and Malek Demir, the only properly disciplined staff wearing their buttons today.
We got credit for last night.
Yeah, right. Yeah, you left it. The dog ate my homework. But we think it's very important. Civic engagement, that's an important topic of discussion this evening. We thank Dr. Zelaya. Thanks for coming, Gilbert.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone. And I will apologize. I'm going to jump off if it's okay. I got a couple more things to do. We're doing logic and accuracy testing of the voting equipment right now. So I'm going to go down and one thing quickly, follow us on social media, on Facebook and Twitter. We do a lot of behind the scenes little videos, which I don't know why other local boards of elections don't do that. We're a true believer of transparency, and you may learn a lot, 1 or 2 things about what we do every single year getting ready for a particular election.
And let me just throw in that our chair, Will Roberts, while he was finished with his remarks, unfortunately, his 4-year-old had unplugged his computer when he was just finished. And so two things worked out. One is he was done, and the second is he had another event to go to anyway. So he wishes us all well and wants also to thank Dr. Zelaya for his participation this evening.
Perfect. Thank you so much, everyone. Stay blessed. Return your
Thank
mail-in
you.
ballot. Vote in person. Take care.
Take care. Thank you, Dr. Z. So,
Bye.
bye-bye. Next up, we have a supervising attorney from the Court Help Center, Allison Kelly, who's going to give us an overview, changing tone a little bit. As many of you know, we are facing still an eviction crisis. Housing is still very unstable. We are seeing hundreds of people going to housing court on Wednesdays, hundreds in the morning, hundreds in the afternoon, the majority of whom are going with failure to pay rent summonses. And for all of us, court is a complicated process, and getting support in court is important for all of us if you're facing the possibility of eviction. So we're very, very pleased to have an attorney, a supervising attorney, Allison Kelly, with us this evening to give us an overview of what her office does at the courts. Allison.
Thank you so much, Matt, and thank you so much to you and the Renters Alliance for having me this evening. I am very excited to talk about MCLA, about the Self-Help Center, and how we can help litigants who are going through a court process and help them navigate that, help them complete the forms that they need to complete in order to successfully litigate. If you give me 1 second, I'm just going to share my screen. Hopefully this works. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Great, thank you. All right, so like Matt said, my name is Allison Kelly. I am a supervising attorney in the Rockville District Court Self-Help Center. And I'm going to give you a little bit of information about what exactly our program is and what we do. So I work for the Maryland Center for Legal Assistance. So what is that? It is a wholly owned subsidiary of Maryland Legal Aid. So while we're located in the courthouse and we're not technically legal aid, legal aid owns our entire organization. So we are a nonprofit. We have a contract with the courts to provide our services. And in Montgomery County, our walk-in is located in the Rockville District Court at 191 East Jefferson Street in Rockville. That's where you'll find me. But we also do have a hotline you can call and a chat you can chat into if you prefer that, where the attorneys are located in Annapolis, but you can contact from anywhere in Maryland. Oh, I'm sorry, I need to go back one. So we have approximately 40 attorneys that provide legal advice and information to litigants without lawyers. Between January 1st of this year and today, we've served almost 30,000 walk-ins throughout the state. Rockville has done about 10% of these. So we've served about 3,000 walk-ins this year so far. We've had almost 75,000 phone interactions and over 10,000 chats. So throughout the state, it's a very widely used service. And something that, people come one time, some people come multiple times. So about our Self-Help Center. First, I put our website here. That's where you can find our chat and also all of the information about our locations. Our hotline number is there. Our website also has webinars. I just wanted to, let's see if I can get, can you all see can you see this screen with the webinars? Yeah, okay. I wanted to make sure to show this. These have their classes or webinars filmed by attorneys made for non-attorneys. Okay, so they are broken down what you need to know about various issues in court, how to respond for a complaint for divorce, how to file for rent escrow, important to tenants, rent debt, facing eviction and failure to pay rent. It's a good place to start to get the nuts and bolts of what is going on in court So I just wanted to point there that we do have those webinars on our website. And then we have these walk-in self-help centers that are, I'm sorry, I'm trying to make this full screen again. I'm not sure I know how to. That are,
It's working.
it is, okay, good. We have walk-in self-help centers in various courts around the state. And like I said, the one we have in Montgomery County is in Rockville. Here again is our location. We are open when the court is open. So Monday through Friday, 8:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. Walk in, first come, first serve. So we don't make any appointments ever. Whoever gets there first, signs in first, will be seen first. It can be both good and bad. So who can we help in Rockville? So this is specific to the Rockville office. We can help tenants, right? We can help tenants who are being sued for rent or eviction, or who are looking to file a rent escrow case. If you're a tenant with a case in district court, you can come to us. We can give you advice about your case, your rights. We can help you complete any forms that you need to complete. We can help you understand the process, what to expect. We can give you referrals. We cannot come to court with you, right? That's the one thing we don't do, but you're welcome to come to us. We do help landlords who own the property in their own name and are seeking a rent or eviction. We can help people who are owed money that is less than $30,000. So if someone owes you less than $30,000, we can help you file a complaint. If you're being sued for money in district court, so for less than $30,000, maybe you're being sued for rent that is owed, old rent. We can help you with that. We can help you respond to that. We can help you prepare for trial. We can help you understand what your rights are and what the process is. We also assist with protective orders, peace orders, and emergency evaluations. We can help with expungements, and we can help with shielding of protective orders or peace orders. Who can we not help? Also an important question. Anyone with cases that are not in district court. So if you have a family law case in circuit court, we unfortunately can't help you at the Rockville Walk-in Center. However, our hotline can help you. You can absolutely call our hotline for circuit court cases. We cannot help with criminal cases. We are not criminal lawyers. Trust me, you do not want our advice for criminal cases. But we can help with expungements. We cannot help with traffic cases. We cannot help businesses. So for example, landlords that don't own the home in their own name, we cannot help them. We cannot help third parties. You're the power of attorney for your mom. We can't help you. Your mom needs to be here. Your friend can't come in for you. Your sister can't come in for you. We need to talk to the party that is actually involved. The only exception is for this is for protective orders. So if someone is filing a protective order on behalf of a minor child or on behalf of a vulnerable adult, we can help that.
Allison,
also-
on the traffic, if I may ask, on the traffic cases, does that include, our last town hall dealt with predatory towing, where we had a lot of tow trucks coming onto properties and illegally towing tenants from parking spaces. And obviously we would like them to go to the Office of Consumer Protection first, but in some cases it could lead to court. Is that something you're able to work with?
So if it's a case for, like, if the consumer files a case for money damages, we can help with that. Like if it costs them money to get their car back, or if they file a case for what's called replevin or detinue, which is where you're trying to actually get property back from someone, we can help with those. So those specific cases that are in district court, we can help with, yeah. We cannot help someone who already has a lawyer on their case. So if you're already represented by someone, we're not going to be able to assist you. You should go talk to your lawyer. So like I said, we also have a call center in Annapolis. This is great because number one, you don't have to leave your home. They have both phone and chat services available. It's always answered by an attorney, right? So know that whoever you're talking to is a lawyer. They can help with both district and circuit court cases, so they're not limited by what's only in district court. And they're open longer hours. So they're open 8:30 a.m. to 8 p.m. Monday through Friday. I wanted to talk a little bit too about a law that just went into effect that we can assist with if people are interested, and that is shielding failure to pay rent cases. So starting October 1st, a new law went into effect that allows a tenant to shield from public record cases from for failure to pay rent that are as a result of losing income due to COVID. So the form that's used is called DCCV 116, and it is available online. There are some requirements to shield the failure to pay rent case. The case has to have been filed between March 5th of 2020 and January 1st of 2022. The failure to pay rent has to have been due to a loss of income arising out of the pandemic. If the landlord received a judgment, the tenant needs to present evidence that the judgment's been satisfied. They've paid the money. The landlord will also have an opportunity to object to the shielding. And if they do, the court will hold a hearing. If the case was dismissed and the landlord did not receive a judgment, the case will be shielded. The court is required to shield it in that case. So we are able to assist with shielding. Please come to our office if you'd like some assistance with that. You can certainly fill out the forms on your own. If you have questions, you can call our hotline. But I just wanted to make sure all of the renters were aware that this is now something that they can do, is shield this from the public record.
It's a very important piece of information, Alice, and I know it's going to create some confusion for some. One question I might have is if CoreLogic comes in and photographs all of the summonses, which I know they do, and they have this information in their record, is there a way to retrieve it and expunge it?
No, there is not. So first of all, these are not expunged records. The records still exist. So with an expungement, they're destroying the records. That's not what's happening here. These records are just being shielded from public view. So they wouldn't be able to come in at a later time and take pictures of the summons if they were already shielded. But if they get that information before the case is shielded, we have no there's no mechanism to somehow get that information away from them. So there certainly are some loopholes in this law.
Can I ask a follow-up there too? Because we think we had a related question, but is beyond this mechanism that you just described, is there any expungement or shielding of eviction records? That was kind of a more global question that was asked. Okay.
Unfortunately, there's not. This is the only one that currently exists.
And what you just mentioned about when the case is dismissed, they're required to comply with this request for this universe of cases, or always shielded if it's
no, for a case filed between March 5th of 2020 and January 1st of 2022. So not all dismissed cases, just these specific ones that fall into this category. Excuse me. And the tenant will need to sign an affidavit saying that it was due to the loss of income due to COVID.
So there's still a tenant for that. Got it. Okay.
Yeah. So it is still in this realm of cases. But the difference is there's no discretion there. The court will need to shield that case if it was dismissed, right? Where there's a judgment, the court has some discretion on whether or not to shield it.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. That's all I have. If you don't have any other questions.
Well, that's a lot. Back to this thing again, just to keep kicking this horse. So if your case is dismissed, you're saying the court automatically shields it?
No, you still need to apply for the shielding.
Okay, so if you have so we recommend that people pursue that, because landlords will use this information when assessing your suitability for an apartment when you apply. So they could technically, there are companies one is called CoreLogic that routinely photograph and then create databases on how many filings people have had against them. I had one way we got the Renters Alliance started was that my landlord foolishly decided to sue me for eviction for a rent that I had already paid. And I got had to go through a process to make sure that it was dismissed and to get a nice apology letter from the attorney, which I have framed in my office. So it is something that has to be done. And I do think that there's probably more legislative work that needs to be done to tie this up. But to be clear, you have to take the step to get it expunged yourself. and that the only expungement records we're talking about that fall under this law have the period of between March 5th, 2020, January 1st, 2022, and have to be COVID impacted related.
And Matt, I just want to add that if you're in court in a case was filed during this time and it gets dismissed, just come see us on the second floor right afterwards. We'll help you do it. We'll help you file the paperwork, or we can at least print out the document for you and you can fill it out yourself. So we're already there. Come see us. We can get it done right away.
David, Malek, Pat, any other questions out there?
Well, one just popped up that seemed related to a question I had, which was, about you mentioned that y'all can't go to court with people. And so my question was generally, do you provide referrals to places that do full representation? And I don't know if maybe you had any thoughts about when that, someone should even be seeking that in these kinds of landlord tenant cases. Because I was going to say, Pat and I were in court today. We saw about 2 or 3 tenants total that had representation next to them. And so I think tenants kind of wonder sometimes is, who ends up with an attorney. And then this question just popped up that there's tenant holding over being filed concurrently with failure to pay rent type cases. Help getting that sorted out. What's going on? Maybe your office could do that, but when do they need a lawyer standing there, I guess, for those cases?
I mean, I'm a lawyer. I love telling everyone they need a lawyer. And I will say I was an eviction defense attorney for 6 years in New York before I came here. So tenants' rights are very close to my heart. And I absolutely have seen the difference that a lawyer can make in cases. Because we don't provide full representation, I certainly hate to say like this is a case that needs it, this is a case that doesn't. I do think nonprofits look for cases where they think there are defenses that they can raise, right? So a lot of cases, there isn't a big fight on how much money is owed. I mean, there might be, right? Sometimes there is. I know like legal aid takes a lot of cases where there's like government subsidies. So they're focused on taking cases that are preserving affordable housing. I know that's a priority. So we can absolutely provide the phone numbers for for the different organizations that will provide representation, but like it's just their general intake line. Like we are not able to get somebody a lawyer better than they can get themselves. I do think for a lot of people, if you have a plan, right, on how you're going to pay off your failure to pay rent case, you can probably go to court by yourself and negotiate that, right? It's I think when things get really complicated, when your landlord's doing some shady things, when it's completely unclear how much money is owed, that's when I think a lawyer can really be beneficial.
There's a quick question in the chat. I think that I know the answer, but Allison, correct me if I'm wrong. A landlord, if you have the money to pay your rent and your landlord, they cannot refuse that money. If they do, we urge you to contact the Office of Landlord and Tenant Affairs. Start there. I don't know why they'd be refusing the money. We not only are they required to accept the money, but we just passed legislation last year that says not only they have to accept your money, but they have to accept third-party money because that was a loophole where they were getting COVID rent relief checks, which were from the government, but because they weren't from the tenant themselves, the landlord could refuse. That loophole has been closed, and so they have to accept the funds. They certainly can't take you to court, or they'd be foolish to do so. If you're standing there with the money and can tell the judge, I've been trying to give it to them, and they refuse to take it, I can't imagine a judge with all the hundreds of cases that they're seeing who would take kindly to that. But before you get to that, we would urge that you contact the Office of Landlord and Tenant Affairs. You can alert us as well at info@rentersalliance.org, or you can contact the Office of Landlord and Tenant Affairs at olta.intake@montgomerycountymd.gov. Could one of you guys please put that in the chat too? Thanks. Allison, is that right? Is there more to that?
No, I think those are absolutely great starts. If you do have a case where they're refusing to, in court already, where they're refusing to accept any money and you have the right to redeem, we could probably help you file a motion to try to get the court to order them to accept the money. but that's like specific, that would probably happen after there's already a judgment, for example, and they're refusing to accept your money. So we could help in that situation.
Great. Folks, anything else for our supervising attorney who's now made perhaps the greatest mistake of letting everybody know what a terrific service is available to them in the courts.
That's great. We want people to come and take advantage of it.
And you're going to get it because we know a lot of people out there who really desperately need your services. And it's going to be very helpful. We're so glad that you're there. Folks, any other questions for Allison Kelly?
Yeah.
I'm good.
David, Malek?
I tried to read through one here. Just give me.
Yeah. Just give a second.
It seemed kind of related to the last question about able to take whether funds can be refused or not. But yeah, but they also were mentioning speaking with a legal aid attorney and things. So I appreciate you saying that you can get referrals then to those organizations. And I know that they're trying to be legal aid and Homeless Persons Representation Project are trying to have people there in the court and everything. Also, though, I did want to say the person if they're refusing the county funds, I think also we've heard that the county will try to respond too. So definitely let your caseworker know about that, your CRRP caseworker for the rent relief. And then, I don't see any other questions though that we haven't.
There's can you expunge eviction records?
For which I think that was go ahead, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so no, you can't.
Right.
Just the only shielding those really specific COVID failure to pay rent cases.
The Renters Alliance is working on something that will shield eviction records. It hasn't passed yet. Obviously, those records have some life over a certain period of time. But after 6 years, 8 years, 10 years, it seems that some record like that shouldn't follow you around. It's not a felony after all. And so there is some consideration out there about reforming those records, shielding of those records as well, because we know that it can be permanently damaging to people. And somebody might be evicted years ago or a long time ago when something was going on in their lives that was beyond their control, and they're on their feet now. And to have this injuring their ability to get housing or maintain housing is not useful to anyone. Let me just, with Allison Kelly listening and providing critique as I go, just to make sure that I'm right, because she is an expert. Let me just remind people what the eviction processes are and what you can be evicted for. Obviously, you can be evicted for not paying your rent. So failure to pay rent, the most common filing in court. Another reason you can be evicted is for breach of lease. So if you've disobeyed or broken the rules of the apartment building that are set out in your lease, the landlord could file a suit against you for breach of lease. Normally in breach of lease cases, these have to be substantial kinds of violations. We're not talking about you had a party once and somebody complained, but if you become a chronic problem or a danger to others, or you're destroying the property or chronically disobeying the rules and disrupting the community life, your landlord could take you to court for breach of lease. So that's number two. The third one, which was raised here earlier, the most common of the outside of the other two, is tenant holding over. And unfortunately, that's becoming an even more common process in Maryland, something that the Renters Alliance is fighting vehemently. But tenant holding over means that the landlord gives you 60 days at the end of your lease to move out and says they're not going to renew the lease. If you stay 1 day longer than the lease term, you are tenant holding over. And on that day, the landlord can file suit to have you evicted for tenant holding over. Unfortunately, Allison, correct me if I'm wrong, but in court, the only thing the judge will ask is if you got proper notice. The landlord does not have to provide a reason for not renewing the lease. And there is very little defense unless you can prove retaliation, which is nearly impossible in the court, since the landlord doesn't have to say why. And I'm sure they've been advised not to say why. The Renters Alliance believes this opens up renters to all types of mischief and retaliation for pursuing promised or required services, for discrimination and other types of abuses in the industry. And we are trying to get passed with one of our board members, Delegate Janelle Wilkins, just cause eviction law that, if passed, would provide the protection that means a landlord would have to automatically renew the lease absent a stated justifiable reason not to. So that has not happened in Maryland yet, even though it happens in Washington and New York and New Jersey and San Francisco and other places around the country, but we're working to make that happen in Maryland. And the fourth way to get evicted is something called wrongful detainer. And I'm never really good at explaining that. Allison, could you do that for us?
So a wrongful detainer case is a case against someone who never had developed a landlord-tenant relationship. So you'll see this for like someone's friend came and stayed in their apartment and refuses to leave. They've never paid any sort of rent, that kind of thing. So they don't have an actual landlord-tenant relationship. There's been no payments that have ever been made, but they're there in the apartment, and that's the difference between the tenant holding over.
Right. Thank you. So those are the four ways. And a landlord cannot evict you until they go to court. So if a landlord comes to you and says, you got to get out in 10 days, you got to get out in 3 days. No, they can threaten you, but they can't actually do anything. If they diminish your services, if they change your locks, if they come into your apartment without your permission, we urge you to call the police. You can also contact us, info@rentersalliance.org. You can contact the county 311, ask for the Office of Landlord and Tenant Affairs immediately. But if it's late at night or on a weekend, we urge you to call the police. The only time a landlord can actually do an eviction is with a court order and accompanied by a sheriff. So make sure that if you feel you're being threatened or the landlord is attempting to evict you without a court order, without going through a judicial process, that's against the law. And we're here to help you, as is the county. And obviously the police department can intervene immediately because really, I think, Allison, they're trespassing or breaking and entering, or if they're taking your furniture out, they're stealing. So it becomes a crime if they don't have a court order. Anything else, folks?
I'll just add on an observation that I think might be helpful for people who haven't been to court yet and get summoned, is just that, as Matt just laid out, so the way they're doing it now is the failure to pay rent cases are all together on a docket that the judge wants to move through very quickly. The idea being that all that's at issue is how much is owed. Do you agree or not? So if you have a failure to pay rent case, just make sure going in that the judge is going to be interested in really focusing only on that. And if you have other issues, he's probably going to refer you to the second floor, honestly, to get help about a different kind of process. And so, that's just, I see that be confusing for people sometimes. And just know that if you don't go to the failure to pay rent, hearing, then they'll just find in favor of the landlord for that amount, which can still be rectified and paid. But there will be a judgment for the landlord then in those. And that's what we see, has been most common lately.
I do also want to make a note about when someone gets behind on rent, often they'll be behind on a couple of months of rent, or they'll continue to be a little bit behind. And so they'll get multiple failure to pay rent cases against them. Make sure you're looking at the case number of the court notices that are sent to you. The amount of people that come to my office that missed a court date because they thought it was on a different day because they had a different failure to pay rent case is very high. So please make sure that you're looking at the case numbers and that you know exactly how many cases are filed against you, because it is very confusing, number one, but it's also really hard to vacate the judgments once you've missed the court date. So please make sure you're paying attention to that.
And I see something in the chat, another question from Sharon. If you receive notice from the court concerning rent that you've already paid, that's what happened to me, by the way. I got a court summons fortunately, it was sworn out by the landlord's attorney on a date that was after both my checks had cleared my bank account, which was beautiful. But they made that mistake. The swearing out said I hadn't paid the rent, and they had actually sworn wrong. I had paid the rent. But Allison, for people who have these kinds of clerk of the court, clerical kinds of processes that they have to navigate, does your office help with that?
Yes, we can help with kind of clerical things. We can help if you have a court notice and you've already paid the rent. You can come to our office. We can help you file a motion to dismiss. I'd recommend that you bring proof of your payment with you. I also recommend you show up to court. I feel like I see a lot of property managers telling tenants not to appear in court. Don't worry, we're just going to dismiss the case. I would be very hesitant to take their word for it. My experience is that landlords and their attorneys are very disorganized, and there's a lot of miscommunication that goes on. And they won't necessarily tell their lawyers to dismiss the case, for example. So you can always show up to court with proof of your payment as well, and tell the judge, because there's a trial, tell the judge, I've paid, and show your proof of payment as well. So if you want to come earlier, you can, and we can help.
Allison, going to court can cost, as you know, tenants a full day's work. And so we, as a starting point, we always say that obviously to get something in writing from the landlord or the landlord's attorney, if they do that, and they get a confirmation from the landlord says we are dismissing the case or something, so they have evidence that in fact it's paid, they're going to do this, and then they still find that the incompetence of the landlord and their attorneys went forward and there was a judgment against, what then?
Come to our office and we will help you file a motion to vacate the judgment. You do want to come within 10 days of the judgment. It's really important to try to come within that 10-day time period. But bring your documentation with you and we can try to help vacate that judgment for you.
Should they call after the court date, the clerk, to verify that in fact it was dismissed?
I do recommend that they do that. Yes, you can also search online if people are familiar with Maryland Judiciary Case Search. It sometimes takes a little bit of time for the information to get there, but you can also look online. But yes, I would absolutely recommend you call the court and find out what happened if you weren't able to be there.
So what we're urging, first and foremost, is to take any court summons very seriously. To make sure, you know, everybody is here, at least watch Judge Judy. You have to have evidence. He said, she said will never hold up anywhere. And unfortunately, our experience is that property managers and landlords are not always truthful. So we urge that everything be done in writing to start, and that you check to make sure that what you were told in fact took place. So if you're not sure, then absolutely go to court. If they tell you in writing that it's going to be dismissed, check to make sure that it has been dismissed. And then, of course, if there's some confusion or something didn't happen as you were promised in writing, then by all means, check with Allison Kelly's office at Court Services to help navigate how to fix that problem. But we'd like to recommend that you not let the problem happen in the first place. So make sure that you get everything in writing and a guarantee of a dismissal, and check that in fact it was dismissed. And if it's not going to cost you any money and you can afford it, you can take a few hours and go to court, then by all means go to court, but do not ignore a court summons.
Absolutely. And just to piggyback on that, I always tell my clients, it's easier to prevent something than to fix something afterwards, right? So you want to go in with that mindset. Let's prevent the judgment as opposed from trying to fix it afterwards.
That sounds like a lawyer who's been doing this for 6 years in eviction cases. David?
I was going to tack on a couple like details just to what you meant. You got to have the evidence that we saw today was that we had a few people say, I've got it on my phone here. And they ended up talking to the attorney, and so it was probably okay. But the judge was much more pleased when someone had a paper printout. So as much as you can, get something on paper if you have proof of payment. And yeah, Matt's recommendation of writing down the specific month you're paying toward, if you can, on a check or money order, goes a long way in that situation in court when they're running a few months behind. And they're talking about May and things. And so that'll help yourself too, if you have that specific on your evidence, I've noticed.
Okay, any other questions for Attorney Allison Kelly at the Court Services Center? Any other questions for us on landlord tenant in general? But it's now or never. Okay, well then understand a couple things. Again, we want to make sure that you know how to get in touch with us. info@rentersalliance.org. If you have a question about your situation, you have a question about your landlord's communications with you, your rights, promised or required services that you think you're not getting. If you have questions about your lease, we can provide you sort of the first and second base of information about what you need to know. And if it's more serious or more complicated, we can help you navigate to escalate your case to the appropriate resource, whether it be a county resource at the County Office of Landlord and Tenant Affairs, code enforcement, which enforces the maintenance of the building and your appliances, as well as mold and vermin, or whether we need to go to the Office of the Attorney General in the state, which enforces state laws, and also whether or not it's a towing thing, and we can take you to the Office of Consumer Protection. And if it's much more serious, we akin this to sort of community health clinic. Well, it's a community legal sort of service. Now we know, because we're experienced in this, which cases need to go to the doctor. And so that would be the lawyers, and we know a bunch of them. There is tonight with us, Allison Kelly from the Court Services Office, but we also know people at Legal Aid, at the Homeless Representation Project, and at Casa de Maryland, which also has lawyers who speak Spanish and deal with the Hispanic community as well. So we can escalate this appropriately when it's necessary, but we also want to say that if it's not necessary to go to the doctor, start with us and start with the information, and maybe we can resolve this thing before it becomes a much larger headache. Anything else from anybody? Then let me thank Dr. Gilbert Zelaya for his information on voting, our board chair, Will Roberts, and his daughter Mackenzie for unplugging his computer at exactly the right time. Let me thank my staff, Pat Beckham, David Mullins, and Malek Demir, and of course, especially Allison Kelly, who an experienced attorney who we're so grateful to have at the courts, giving us information and supporting renters whose homes are so important to all of us. So thank you very much to all of you. With that, any questions, any further questions, email us at info@Renters Alliance. This Renter Town Hall is on YouTube, so you can watch it again if you like. Thank you all for coming, and good night.
Good night.